The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Welcome to Gate City Chronicles. I'm Kevin Avard, your host. And today we have a special guest, Representative Frank Edelblut.
Very good.
I did it good, wonderful. And this is a political season, as you know, and obviously everybody's running to talk to the presidential candidates. But there's another election that's coming up, another office that is going to be contested, and that is the office for governor. And Frank, you're putting in your hat or considering the run for a governor. Is that correct?
Right. So I've announced exploratory.
Okay.
So I'm looking into the option of whether or not I think I'm going to run.
Okay.
Just trying to see if there's some resonance in the state of New Hampshire and among the people of New Hampshire for the message that I have and that I want to bring. It is early to get in, though. I mean, there's so much noise, isn't there, with all of the presidentials going on?
Well, with all of them, exactly. And of course, it's fun to see them come to New Hampshire, and it's nice that you can press the flesh. You know, you can look at them in the eye, and you get a general sense of what they're all about. And I really appreciate that about New Hampshire. It's just, it's wonderful. And Rand's coming, Trump's coming, Hillary was here the other day. I actually met her Secret Service person at the Capitol.
Good for you.
So, well, yeah.
Right.
It was interesting.
As long as they weren't arresting you or something.
No. They were actually just touring the Capitol, but it was interesting. But you're a state rep. You reside in what town?
I live in Wilton.
In Wilton, right. And you serve on 3 committees?
I do. I serve on 3 committees. So I live in Wilton, but I represent one of the Floteria districts.
Okay.
So I actually have 10 towns that I represent, which is a fairly large district for a rep.
Yeah.
And in fact, I share my district with 4 senators. You're one of them. So yourself, Senator Sanborn, Senator Little, and Senator Daniels.
What town does that bleed into mine? Is it New Ipswich or?
Greenville.
Greenville.
We share Greenville together.
Okay, interesting.
Exactly. So that's kind of the district that I'm represented, and I'm thoroughly enjoying my work at the State House. I'm excited. I'm fun to be engaged and working for the people of New Hampshire and trying to really move the ball forward every time I get a chance.
I'm not going to throw just one of the first weeks or 2 weeks while we were up at the Capitol. I actually appreciated you coming to my office. You sat in my chair and you just in my office and you just said, "Hey, what any advice?" I thought that was great. I wish a lot of state reps would go to their senators and do the very same thing because not everybody has all the answers.
I mean, in life, we don't have all the answers. We all need input from somebody, and we have to be open to listening to people and trying to figure out what's going on.
Right.
I mean, that's part of why I announced when I did, because I'm pretty early in this cycle, right? But I don't have really broad name recognition. So right now, I'm spending a lot of time getting out, meeting with lots of folks, quite frankly. As I say, I'm on the rubber chicken circuit and the spaghetti dinner circuit. So I just have to go to all kinds of meetings and introduce myself to folks, let them hear kind of what I'm about, why I'm running, what I think the future of New Hampshire has in store for it, and see, again, if it's a message that resonates with folks. So.
And I appreciate that, too. And one of the things that I like to ask candidates, whether it's a presidential candidate or any other office, what are people saying to you? What's on their heart? What's in their? What are they asking you? What seems to be their hot button lately?
So, I don't know if there is a hot button right now. I think there's actually kind of a cold button, which is basically, we've been kind of lulled into this sense of status quo right now. And so there's, a sense of gee, where are we going? So there's this kind of uncertainty to some, for many people, a bit of ambiguity, so what does the future hold? I don't understand what's going on in the future. And so that ambiguity, I think, and that uncertainty really causes some uneasiness for folks in the state, and I think that's really where we are.
Right.
I mean, that's the sense I get. I mean, we know that, there are the urgent problems. We've got opioid, clearly a big issue, and quite frankly, a crisis on the ground today that we need to deal with.
And then we have, newsflash, that the czar is not even meeting up with the police department. I mean, there's a disconnect there.
Well, if you want to talk about the czar, I don't know if you were at the last fiscal committee, the July fiscal committee meeting. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that the czar is a respectable person, but it was clear from the meeting that he didn't really have a command of the job that he's after. I mean, in the fiscal committee, I believe it was in the neighborhood of $7 million of requests came forward from education, from HHS, projects to deal with the opioid crisis. And again, his main job is to coordinate efforts, and he was unaware that that $7 million was even being asked for or being moved in the direction of appropriation. When he was questioned, so he's come up with a plan, a 22-point plan, and the plan just lists things that he wants to accomplish. And so one of the members of the fiscal committee said to him, like, well, this is a good plan, but really what we need to know is how much is it going to cost us, and what are the results that we can expect out of that?
Right.
And then, quite frankly, the person on the fiscal committee said, and we need to have that answer soon.
I wonder who that was.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm not answering that. But so we need to have this answer soon, like in 2 weeks. And he says, well, you won't have it in 200 days. Do you know, that is an unacceptable answer.
Right.
I mean, in 200 days, people are going to be dying. Exactly. And there was a degree of, awe with that answer. Exactly. And you're just like, I cannot believe that somebody can answer that. So we need somebody who is going to pull this together immediately, and let's get the task force on the ground, making sure that things happen.
Now, with that czar, though, if we even, that is under the auspices of the governor. And
It is.
That's a critical role. Everybody's complaining about it. And I'm afraid that it's going to turn into a political football that everybody's going to be playing with, and all of this, and we're going to need more money there. And nothing's still going to get done.
Well, so I would say that the fiscal committee depoliticized it,
Right.
because they approved the funding for the position. And then I don't believe there was a formal vote, but there was a lot of concern about the individual in that role and whether or not that was the right person for that role.
Right. Well, we had presidential candidates talking about it. That's what I'm talking about.
Then it's really getting big when that happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, okay.
And there is a problem. We've tried to address some of the opiates and the narcon.
Exactly.
There's other issues that we definitely need to look at. Some of these prescription drugs coming into the state, that they're being used specifically to dope up with.
Right.
I know that Pfizer is talking about they're developing new prescription drugs that once you crush it, it loses its effectiveness.
Potency, right.
Yeah, and so there are things that are in the works, but yet there's so much going on, and people are getting exasperated.
They're getting exacerbated, right? Well, so I mean, it goes back to you asked me the question, say like, so what is on the minds of people? And I describe kind of this. There's not like something that stands out. There's kind of like this uncertainty or this ambiguity. And I think the problem is, and this is one of the reasons why I'm moving into the race for governor. There is, in my mind, there's a sense of that our officials in Concord are functioning more like custodians than they are leaders. They're not really setting a vision and a direction for where things need to go. And so again, that's what creates the uncertainty for people. They're saying like, okay, so what does the future look like? Somebody map this out for me, tell me where we're going as a state, so then I can either buy into that vision and I can participate in it, or I can decide to disengage from it. But instead, we're in this sort of limbo state of, it's like do no harm type of a policy. You know what I mean? We're custodians, we manage. The problem with that is it's really kind of, the thought is, if I do no harm, if I just am a custodian, then everything will be okay. Mm-hmm. But that's the false premise.
Right.
Because, the world is moving on, and so here we are as New Hampshire, and we're sort of in this state, this status state that we don't do anything. And the world is going past us, it's leaving. Opportunities present themselves to New Hampshire. We don't take advantage of them, so those disappear, and we don't get the advantage.
Can you give me an example of that?
Of opportunities that are moving beyond. So I would probably turn to, well, I'll give you a couple of examples. So let me kind of back up a little bit in terms of where I'd go. This is we're afraid of change. So here's a concrete example in Manchester, is Uber.
Oh, yes.
I'm just sorry. So that's what the problem is. Like, we don't want to embrace change. Like, the world is moving on, and we're like, no, we can't have Uber cars. Like, this will be a terrible thing. Yeah. And what we have to decide, and I realize that change is always difficult for everybody, but that we can't see change as a threat. We have to learn to embrace the change and assimilate it so that we can build a 21st century economy that, is going to create opportunity for everybody in New Hampshire.
Right.
Because the other states around us are doing that, and quite frankly, they're moving forward.
Yeah, if you drive down now, to the south, you see this construction everywhere in Massachusetts. Everywhere you see roads being tarred.
Right.
And then you come back up here, and you don't see the development going on. You don't see businesses thriving. You see this mass exodus every morning going from the north down south, and that's disheartening.
Well, so I mean, I hate to say this, but I mean, that's part of the problem with this kind of status quo. Right. I mean, if you think about it, what is economic development, the best or the grandest, I would say, most expensive maybe, economic development idea we've heard in the last couple of years? It is, this is the good plan, guys. You ready? We're going to build a train to Boston.
Yeah, you're in Nashua, right? So that's a popular decision in Nashua.
Right, but what I'm saying is, why don't we, if we're going to invest that kind of money, why don't we have jobs here in New Hampshire?
Right.
Instead of putting people on a train, say like, well, you know what, it's conceding, that we can't win the battle. It's saying to ourselves, you know what, we can't develop a good, strong economy, vibrant economy here in New Hampshire. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the second best thing, which is we'll build a train so you can go to Boston where you can get a good job. I mean, that's a ridiculous premise. And what we really need to do is we need to be thinking, how do we invest in our, communities?
And the thing about the train is that if it goes up to Manchester, well, they're not going to have Uber once they get off the train to get
Can I just tell you something? Like, let's consider Uber for a second. So one of the issues with Uber, right, is that they're worried about the background checks on the drivers. And again, you have to look forward, right? We've got hands-free cars coming. I mean, by the time that train gets built, hands-free cars will be out already, and there won't even be drivers in Uber. You'll just get your smartphone, and you're going to call up the Uber car. You're going to get in. It's going to take you to your destination and drop you off.
We're looking at a train when we're moving into the Jetsons.
Well,
similar.
Exactly. We're grabbing 18th century technology to build a 21st century economy, and it just doesn't work that way.
I know there are a lot of people that are pushing for it, and there's...
So I didn't mean to bring up a sensitive subject for here in Nashua
no, it's
in
fine.
particular.
I'm not anti-train, but I just don't see how it's going to... From what I see is that a train is good provided that the economy is thriving. If it's not thriving, then it is a drag on the economy, and it's going to bring down the buses. So it's not that I'm anti it, it's that we need to make sure that the economy is robust and growing, and I don't see that.
Well, so another thing is, I mean, we have the opportunity to invest in our future. I mean, because another problem that I noticed, and I don't know if you noticed this up at the State House, is I refer to as people get into this mode of wringing their hands. And they sit there and they go like, they're wringing their hands over the fact that they say like, we've got a serious problem in the state of New Hampshire. We've got elderly. As if it's a virus that you have to get an antibiotic for, when this is a demographic shift that has been happening for the past 30 years. And it's not the kind of thing that you fight against. It's the kind of thing, again, it's just like the Uber. You embrace the change and you play to your strengths.
That was going to be actually one of my next questions, because in the next 7 years, we're going to be, there are going to be a ton of people, retiring. The pensions, you serve on pensions. Mm-hmm. We have a huge liability there that's unfunded. That is a big noose or an albatross around our neck. We have to get a handle on that.
Right.
And we've tried to in times past, but with this retirement coming, if you will, I don't see us moving in a direction to address it at this point.
But there's a reason why. It's because we're not actually trying to address it. We're trying to resist it. Mm-hmm. In other words, so it's change, and it's going to happen whether we want it to or not. Yeah. Demographic shifts are not easily changed, right? And so rather than try to fight against it and act like it's an albatross around our neck, or it's a virus that's spreading throughout our state, we need to embrace it, and we need to build an economy that does hold on to that.
Well, and how do we take care of them? But what I meant by with the albatrosses, though, is that the unfunded mandates, unfunded liabilities, I should say, not mandates, with the pensions.
Yeah,
that's a lot of money.
Yeah, so that's a separate. We can talk specifically about that, because I do know a lot of the details relative to the pension. Mm-hmm. I mean, and our UAAL, unfunded actuarially accrued liability, is $4.3 billion. Now, how that came about, just to be clear, is from 1996 until 2007, we were basically using an unsound actuarial method in terms of determining the funding for our pension. And so when we changed, all of a sudden, we realized, uh-oh, we haven't been funding enough. So the liability didn't just appear on that date. The liability already existed. We just finally measured it and said, uh-oh, look at what we have here that we have to deal with. And so, in the pension committee, we're looking at different bills and different options to try and deal with that. I think that what we have to do is, and I don't want to digress, because my background's in finance, and we could digress into the details of the funding policy.
Well, actually, I was going to go into your background a little bit after you answer this, but go ahead, just finish your thought.
Yeah, so the point is, we're trying to be responsible to dig our way out of that hole. And sometimes I think we are more responsible than not. I mean, it's difficult, politicians like easy answers, not the real and hard answers sometimes. So I think that while we are not using an unsound actuarial method, there are still some things in the way we're computing our liability that I think stretch the bounds of what I would be comfortable with.
Okay. And as governor, you could make some positive changes?
Well, actually, as governor, you can try and influence that, but remember, that's run by the New Hampshire Retirement System, which is a separate board, separate entity, that is really funded by the employees who are part of that.
There aren't any quick fixes.
There are not quick fixes to problems like that. If you took 16 years or whatever it is to dig a hole, then you can't just jump out of it.
A little bit about your background. Who are you?
You're
a state rep. You're from a neighboring town.
I'm a state representative. I live in the town of Wilton. Again, I represent those 10 towns out there. Before running for state rep, I was a business guy. I was an entrepreneur. So classic story. I started a company at my kitchen table. When the company grew, I had to move my daughter. She had to share a bedroom with my son at that point because I needed an office so that I could, function while I was still running the business. And just stuck with the business, over a long period of time. Ultimately ran it for 18 years, and then was able to sell that business to a company. And then again, when you're an entrepreneur, you continue to move and you have ideas. And so I've been instrumental. I do now investing in startup companies, and I have a portfolio of about 13 companies.
Oh, wow.
Some are doing better, and most are doing pretty well. I don't have any real flameouts, But again, that's the nature of being an entrepreneur. Some ideas are going to really take off and are going to do well, and some are going to do less well.
And so you're basically living the American dream. In some respects, an entrepreneur, you take the risks. You've done the kitchen table. My heart goes out to you. I mean, that really is the American dream. Is you have a vision and you went after it.
Well, and so this is why I'm running for governor. Yeah. I have a vision for New Hampshire. And actually, I think the timing for why I would be the right kind of candidate for governor is, again, I don't know if you know this, but for the last 10 years, we've had Democrat governors. For only 2 of the last 18 years, there's been a Democrat governor. So I think we need a change up, in the corner office, which is, I'm happy to occupy that office. And I think what we need is, at this time in history, again, because of this kind of custodianism that's been taking, I don't know if that's a word even, if this custodial approach has taken place for so many years, we need an inflection point. We need to change the direction of the state. I mean, what we'd have to realize is there are states that would prefer to have our jobs. I mean, Texas has openly come after New Hampshire.
Sure. And so, California and all the other states.
These guys want to eat our lunch.
Right.
And we need to, and this is the other thing that the governor, I think, needs to be able to do, is to pull people together. And I don't care, Republican, Independent, Democrat, we got to lock arms. At a certain point, we're all Granite Staters, right? And we need to lock arms and say, you're not coming in here. These jobs are for us. Right. And in fact, go pick on Oklahoma, and we are going to defend our turf. And not only that, we're going to then go on the offensive. Because we have circumstances on the ground in New Hampshire, even the aging population, which I think is a strength, not a disadvantage, in terms of being able to grow a vibrant economy that would put New Hampshire on the map. We could be a beacon, an economic beacon, not only, across the United States, where people are like, wow, the things that they're doing in that state are unbelievable, but really around the world, because this demographic shift that's taking place is taking place around the world. And so rather than fight it, I think we embrace it and we turn it into an economic advantage, which is what entrepreneurs do, right? we see change, we see inflection, we see, when we see those kind of things, we see opportunity.
I was just going to say
Exactly. We just can we jump on it? How do we take something and make something valuable out of it is what we're trying to do.
Amazing. Off camera, I asked, you said a buzzword that it's something that I've been trying to talk to people about for a while now, and that's not a buzzword, but a buzz phrase, and that's building bridges. Not physical bridges, but bridges between people.
Right.
When people come to my office, they come sit down. I don't ask them if they're a Democrat. I don't ask them if they're a Republican. They all know I am a Republican. I'm a conservative Republican, and I'm very proud of it.
Right.
But that's not going to shut them off.
Right.
It's not going to close that gate. And I've witnessed you do this to other people in that, Lisa Brady, you've talked to her, you've actually engaged. I was surprised to find out you actually did your homework and due diligence on this person.
Went to a hearing with Lisa.
You went to, that's above and beyond, and I look for that in characters with people that are public servants. It's not a country boy or country girl club. It's a place where you get things done and you actually serve the people. And that has always been my mantra. And I was really taken back when you said you want to build bridges. That's exactly. No man's an island, no woman's an island unto themselves. You can't do it by being, intransigent.
Absolutely not.
My way or the highway, and you're the bad guy,
Right.
and I'm going to stick the media on you. That you can't do that anymore.
I mean, as an entrepreneur, there's different leadership styles, and I think that my style is one of I like to bring everybody along, and everybody gets lifted up.
Right.
I often used to talk about leadership in my company, and there's two different types of leadership that I like to kind of describe. One is the person who you beat up on the other guy enough times. You disparage them, you say disparaging things, and so you drive them down, and then that makes you the leader because you're on top, right? Because if they're so bad, then you must be the best. That's not the kind of leadership that I have. The kind of leadership I like is I have a vision. I want to go someplace, and I hope that you'll come along with me, and we can all, the tide's going to come up, and everybody's going to benefit through that process. And I think that's the kind of leadership that New Hampshire needs right now, to try and move the state forward. So.
Yeah, that's good advice. And that's one of the things that I try to encourage other people. Just because it's not your bill, if you can, if you agree with it, help them out and let them get the credit for it.
Right.
It's a good way to build a bridge. Not to get on a real hot topic, but I'm going to do it, and I wasn't intended to. But there's this pipeline that is being proposed, and I'm all for natural gas. I think it's clean. I think our New Hampshire needs certain energy things, but I'm also for private property and private property rights. And this pipeline seems to be, in a lot of people's minds, bulldozing through people's personal property rights. And it's a very unpopular situation in District 12. Obviously, Greenville's
In
one
my
of them.
district as well. Right.
And we have a number of people coming out against it, and I don't see the floods of people for it. Any comments?
Yeah, so just for full disclosure, I actually own property that the pipeline will be cutting through.
Okay.
So I'm, to use the nomenclature that people use, I'm in the incineration zone, right? Okay.
And okay.
Which is somewhat inflammatory language, exactly.
No pun intended.
No
of
pun
course.
intended, yeah, exactly.
But
So-
there's a lot of questions, and I think people have some really good, legitimate questions as to, do we really need it? Are we going to benefit from it? Is my property going to be affected? Is there a danger? Is there a risk? What about the fracking? There are tons of questions, and there just seems to be this nebulous ambiguity just hanging over District 12, and it doesn't seem as though we're getting the right answers, and I'm still not convinced it's going to benefit us
Right.
in the long run.
So my approach to this, because again, I have property that will, I don't know if destroyed would be the right word, but it will feel the effects of the pipeline coming
Sure.
through. So my approach has really been to take on kind of the legislative role to try and bring, so the FERC process through which this pipeline will or will not be approved is really a federal beast.
It is.
And it is not a beast that's easily, or a dragon that's easily slayed, right? So as a legislator, what I've really been focused mostly on is two things. One is to try and put as many legislative safeguards in to protect the rights of the property owners. I mean, that's what I have been fighting for. And then, so it's the property owners, but then the second is the ratepayers of New Hampshire. Because what's going to happen is if this pipe comes through, and the ratepayers are going to end up paying for that. And so So for example, one of the ideas that I'm pursuing is, if that pipeline comes through, like let's imagine we build this pipeline and we have, multi-billions of dollars that have to be absorbed by ratepayers, and then all of a sudden we discover fracked gas is a bad thing. Exactly. Are we going to be paying for this thing forever? So I think we need, for example, we can control this thing and say, like, how about if we pay for it on a percentage of gas that actually comes through? So if this thing goes idle on us, we're not going to be paying for it for the next 50 years, and the gas pump company will have moved on and onto another project or something like that.
Right.
So I think we have an opportunity legislatively to try and help protect the rights of the people. Toward that end, so I've been working with the Mason Pipeline Group in particular, and we have a meeting next Thursday, that I've been one of the organizers for, that's going to call all of the legislators together so we kind of have a coordinated effort in terms of trying to say, like, what are the legislative things that we need to do to protect the citizens of New Hampshire?
I think Senator Sanborn tried to introduce an amendment to help with the process and let in some safeguards. And of course, there were about 5 of us, Senator Daniels, myself, Bertzell, and of course Senator Sanborn, tried to get this amendment passed, and it didn't pass. So and it might have
got
been
it out of the House. It was tougher in the Senate.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
In fact, I had a great one come out of the House. I don't know what happened when it got to you guys.
Well, it's we just need people to speak up. That's all, and to address. They've got our ear. They just need to get the ear of the other senators to let them know. This is something that's. We know we need the energy. I get that.
Right. I mean, we have very, very high utility rates, which is really a drag on the economy.
Mm-hmm.
It's very difficult to operate a business that requires power up in New Hampshire.
And the thing is that the pipeline is going to actually go back into Massachusetts, where it could have done a straight line over there, and it would have had the same effect with our power grid. And so...
Right, exactly. It didn't have to come through New Hampshire, other than Massachusetts was effective at stopping it.
Yeah, and so New Hampshire, all right, so it would have had the exact same effect, and we talked to the governor, and we handed her a whole bunch of questions. I didn't particularly see any of the answers come back. I'm not going to throw mud at her, but I'm just saying it was...
Well, I think that she supports the pipeline.
She does, and with the same idea that the gas is going to help everybody. Well, it could have done the same thing going straight through Massachusetts. Why are we interrupting these property rights in the process? And that's the problem I have.
Right.
It's private property. If you don't
so again, hence, so we're on the same page there. It's like we have to protect the property rights of these folks, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, and I appreciate your stand on that. How do people get in touch with you to learn more about you?
So just getting going, so don't have everything up, but you can find me on Facebook as Rep Frank Edelblut, and you'll certainly see some of the stuff that I stand for. And then, eventually, so I'm declared in terms of my exploratory, and what that means is at this time I'm traveling around. We talked about eating the chicken dinners and the spaghetti dinners and meeting folks, and then pulling together kind of the team and all the media and the website and stuff like that. So that stuff will get out there soon enough. But again, I think we still have time.
Any final thoughts that you have for the viewers?
Yeah, so I think that New Hampshire is it's a great state. I mean, again, I had the opportunity to raise my family here. I deliberately located my business here because of the New Hampshire advantage, which in my mind, if you'd be deceiving yourself if you didn't admit that has slipped over the last couple of years. And so, but I think we can restore that. I think that there's opportunity. So there's so much potential in this state, so much more to offer. And I really think that my background just may be, I mean, it doesn't have to be me. It could be somebody with a similar kind of a background, but we need a governor who is going to be able to pull the state together, energize us, and put us on an inflection point into the 21st century. We can't continue to tread water because we're going backwards, because we're not going forwards.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And thanks for watching Gate City Chronicles. We hope that this is informative. And if you have any interest, please contact Representative Edelblut. And until next week, thanks for watching Gate City Chronicles. We'll see you. Thank you for watching Gate City Chronicles, and we want to thank our sponsor, Avard Cleaning. They've been a sponsor for quite a few years now, and we appreciate them being a sponsor. And if you want to be a guest on our show, contact accessnashua@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your story. Until next week, thanks for watching.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.